Tuscaloosa is still lit. A classic call from the greatest, as far as we're concerned, at calling Alabama football, Eli Gold.
Here's Tua stepping back, loads up, looks long, throws, end zone,
touchdown!
Alabama! Devontae Smith! Touchdown, Alabama! And the Crimson Tide has once again ascended to the top of the college football mountain. Their 5th national championship in 9 years, their 17th overall. And for Coach Nick Saban, a career 6th national championship, a number matched only by the legendary Paul Bear Bryant. Alabama is back as the champion of college football. How about that?
To quote a name that some of you listening will shake your head and say, who is that? Others will know, Jackie Gleason. How sweet it is. Good morning, Eli Gold. Roll Tide.
Good morning. How are you today?
Couldn't be better. Just couldn't be better. T-Town is lit, Eli. T-Town is lit.
It's unbelievable. It's the whole scenario, all the emotional ups and downs, and you know, it's very interesting. I've heard from a lot of people, obviously, about that final call there, and people always, you know, in all of the games that we've done, the national championship games, I always try and find, I don't know if you want to call it a cutesy way to try and wrap up what had just transpired. You know, out at the Rose Bowl, it was, and the roses in this grand old stadium are once again crimson.
Beautiful.
And when Bama beat Notre Dame in Miami, it was, you know, another national championship rolls up onto South Beach and so on.
Yeah.
But I didn't think that was going to be appropriate if Alabama won the national title on Monday night. I, as folks have heard the story, I do a lot of my thinking in the shower on game day.
Visual.
It really is. And for those of you who are having breakfast, I apologize. But I do some of my best thinking on game day in the shower.
Yes.
Nothing is scripted, but I come up with ideas as to how I'm going to wrap things up if Alabama wins. You know, and I said to myself, this is too big of a historical situation with Coach Saban, you know, potentially tying Bear Bryant. And I said, that doesn't call for a cutesy wrap-up. It calls for a very factual, historical wrap-up. And that's why I did what I did. I really went very factually, ticking off how many numbers of championships, and for Coach Saban, you know, tying only the great Paul Bear Bryant. So it was more of a factual wrap-up than a cutesy wrap-up. And that's how that came about. You just open your mouth and pray for the best.
Eli, you have answered our first question. We wanted to know if your classic calls or calls in a situation, a game of that magnitude, are planned. If they're off the top of the head or they're planned. Did not know. So when you do that thinking in the shower,
yeah.
do you, you know, the acoustics are so good, do you say the lines out loud, or do you just...
I tend to just, I don't know. I think I just say them in my head.
I see.
But you know what it is? You look for something that makes sense.
Yes.
When Bama was at the Rose Bowl, well, that was going to bring everything full circle back to the 20s when Bama played at the Rose Bowl and brought Southern college football prominence, because in those days it was the West that was the strong area of the country. And I said, man, somehow I got to tie in roses, you know, because look, it's even in the fight song,
yes.
You know, remember the Rose Bowl? And I thought I got to somehow tie that in. And then the same thing again with Miami is that, you know, you got South Beach, you got the tide coming in off the Atlantic Ocean, and the Crimson Tide. I said, somehow I got to tie this together. Then I started thinking, well, what the heck is there about Atlanta? I mean, not being a wise guy here, there's nothing that immediately jumped out at me.
I understand.
And then I said, and you know, plus the fact you're starting to invoke the name of Coach Saban, Coach Bryant. This isn't the time to be cute. This is the time to just lay the facts out there, which in its own right establishes how great Alabama and its coaches have been over the years. So that's why I decided to, and then I'm in the shower, seriously, and I'm saying, all right, how do I say this? What order do I do this? What do I do? And so I had an idea, but again, nothing is scripted. You just do it and pray that your years of experience will not leave you at a critical moment.
And they don't. Not in your case, that's for sure. Eli, Meg Summers, who knows as much about football as any woman on the planet, maybe any man on the planet, has a question for you.
I want to know, Eli, what did it feel like for you to make that historic call, though? Was it as exciting as any of these other national championship games, or because it was down to the wire, were you more hyped than usual?
I think I was probably, like the fans, a little more hyped than usual. In those other games that I've cited and some of the other national title games, it was well known. In the first quarter against Notre Dame, you knew you were going to win the ball game. That was over. This one, it happened bang bang. It was an explosive play. Tua to Devontae, it was an explosive play. You just go with it, but you always have in your mind, and I really do. I said to myself, be excited, but be calm. And I got a text yesterday from the voice of the Memphis Grizzlies of the NBA, and he said, I don't know, and I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back. He says, I don't know if I could have kept my calm the way you did. He said, you were excited, but you were factual. You didn't go crazy. He said, I would have been yelling like a buffoon. And clearly I was excited.
Yes.
But I also
composed.
I said to myself, look, I said, don't screw this up, because this call is going to live on forever.
Forever, yes.
With all the media, with all the, in the Bryant Museum and all of this, I said, don't screw it up. Just take your time. And I did. I didn't rush. I was very deliberate, but I was sure as heck excited for the team, for the coaches, for the players, and for the fans, because it was a spectacular finish.
Well, Eli, your call remains and is supreme as far as we're concerned. A little later in our show this morning, we're going to play the same call, of course yours, and then the ESPN Spanish network call we have.
I heard that.
And a Russian call we also have on this.
Yeah, the Russian guy sounded like, well, ho-hum, it's over. Let's head back to Siberia. I mean, whatever.
Well, he was into vodka, I think. I think he had a few.
I don't know, but I found that interesting. Somebody sent me a compilation of the Georgia network, ourselves, of Sean McDonough on ESPN, all of that. But yeah, the Russian guy was like, all right, it's over. Let's move on. It was a very different approach to the call.
On some radio sports talk shows this week, some have suggested, some of the talking heads, that this Bama championship game is among the top 5 best games ever. How do you react to that?
I would agree. I mean, I was out last night doing a hockey game. I was working last night doing a hockey game, and I had people come up to me who said, look, I'm an Auburn fan, but that might have been one of the greatest games of all time.
Absolutely. It had everything. It had everything, Eli.
It did. It had every single emotion. It had the good, the bad, the ugly, and thankfully the euphoria for the Alabama fans of winning yet another national title. I mean, we were whipped. We got off the air, true story, and Phil and myself and Tom Stipe and Chris Stewart, we got off the air finally after all the postmortems, and we just sat there. I mean, normally we'll throw our stuff in our bag and get out and get gone. We sat there and we were whipped. We were totally wiped out. And
you had to be. We were numb just watching and listening.
Had to be. Yeah,
just numb.
Had to be. Yeah. So it was one of the most outstanding. There have been others, the T.J. Yeldon run at the finish, the pass catch in LSU.
Sure.
I mean, there have been tons, the Roy Upchurch play to beat Auburn down at their place. There have been tons of big games. But, man, when it's the national title game and it ends like that, it's a walk-off kind of scenario, like it's being, it was the game. It was Game 7 of the World Series. It was all of that rolled into one. We were just whipped, and I'm sure the fans were as well. And I know the players left everything out on the field.
Okay, I know the decision was made in the locker room. But had you been tipped off? Did you expect that we would see Tua? Were you stunned like a lot of fans were that this freshman was going into the national championship game and Jalen was coming out in the second half? Where were you ahead of time on this?
It was halftime, obviously, and we have our studio guy who takes care of halftime. He was interviewing Gene Stallings at the time, live, breaking down the first half. So Phil and myself and Tom, and we were all sitting around, and we looked at each other and said, I forget who, somebody said, do you think he'll have the guts to put Tua in? And to be very honest and to be factual, I don't think he used the word guts, but nevertheless.
I understand. You're a gentleman.
He said, do you think he'll have the guts to put Tua in? And one of us said, he will have the guts to play whoever the heck is going to get Alabama the championship.
Yes, sir.
And then Phil said, I'm telling you, Tua's coming in. I said, you think so? He said, I'm telling you. They didn't move. The team didn't move much. He said, I'm telling you, we're going to see Tua. And I said, and we were all ready. We were prepared if that happened. But we were not tipped off. But there were people in the press box, not just our radio booth, but we wandered out, used the men's room, what have you, and you talked to folks, and people were saying, are they going to bring in the Hawaiian kid? Some folks couldn't pronounce his name, whatever.
The Hawaiian Tebow, somebody called him yesterday.
Oh, really? Okay, but it was. We were not surprised. We were not tipped off, but we were not surprised.
And we'll use the word gutsy too. What a gutsy move it was for Coach Saban. Some said it maybe is the most brilliant coaching decision he's ever made. Too strong of a statement or a fair statement?
Well, I think I'm sure he has made other huge calls. We know he has, but I think the scenario of the national title made it even bigger. But you know what? The guy makes these plays, he makes these decisions knowing that he is arguably, if not even an argument, the greatest football coach ever to be in college football. So he has, how do I phrase this right? He has, he has that ability that if he makes a call and it doesn't go right, he will not get as much blowback as some others might if it doesn't work out. So he just does what he feels is best and what is going to win. He doesn't care about outside periphery stuff.
All the noise he calls. But, Eli Gold, it could easily have not worked out. I mean, talk about a roll of the dice. I mean, Tua could have gone in, as we all know, and bombed under the pressure as a freshman on that platform, that big of a game, so much at stake. And then you got to put Jalen back in, and you don't know exactly where his head is going to be after that decision was made. So it really was an amazing, gutsy call by Coach.
It was gutsy, but the man is good. And, let's remember, every single practice, he's there.
And they said that Tua had lit it up at practice prior to this game.
Oh, he's very good, and everybody knew how talented. We all go to practice. I don't go to every one by any stretch, but we all knew how talented the man was, and he had completed that play on a regular basis, not necessarily to Devontae, but that is a play that, according to Brian Dable, the offensive coordinator, he really had an ability to complete. He had the eyes. He knew where to look. That was a play that he had completed many times in practice, which is something that the coaches knew, obviously.
Right, and that we didn't.
It's a gutsy call, but that's why Nick Saban is Nick Saban. That's why he is the greatest of all time. And some folks will argue differently, and that's fine. That's their prerogative.
What do you make of Lane Kiffin blowing up Twitter and then going on the Dan Patrick show yesterday and not backing down, saying Tua was going to leave Alabama had he not played in that game? Is that fake news from Kiffin? What is that?
No idea. I don't. That's why I'm not on Twitter or Facebook. Are
you not?
No, I am not. I used to have accounts on both, and I shut them down a long time ago. I'm not.
You don't go there.
I don't go there. It's not my business.
Okay, let's talk about President Donald Trump in attendance at that game. Did he end up in your booth?
No, unfortunately, what happened, as I am told, is that they ended up putting him in a suite across the stadium at the 50. And we were all the way on this side of the stadium down at the goal line. We did not have a great broadcast location in that stadium. And even though they had told us he would, that's typical in an NFL stadium. They don't give good spots away that they can otherwise sell.
Interesting.
So radio and the press box is in the end zone, if you noticed. And the radio booths were down at the goal line and the 5-yard line. And I am told that it was too much of a logistical hassle to get him from his suite at the 50 through the crowd.
And we had heard he might come over at the end of the first quarter. Now, did you know prior to going on the air that he would not be coming over, or were you prepared to interview him?
We were prepared. We had invited him the week prior. We went through the governor and the senator and some other folks that we knew. We invited him, and we heard nothing. Then on game day, we got calls and were told that he would be coming over to see us, that he would indeed come by. Even though we invited him, we were told he might also stop into the Georgia radio booth just to be politically correct.
Sure.
But so we were ready. I did have questions in my mind that I wanted to ask. It was going to be a totally non-political interview. I was not going anywhere other than talking about sports, his old ownership in the USFL and all of that. But he never showed up, and we just didn't even think about it after a while. Then we heard that he'd already left the building at halftime. And that was that. So I guess it didn't work out, and apparently it was a logistical issue. But, the fact that they entertained our invitation was very nice, and, life goes on. And, with no disrespect, and this is not a political statement at all, I was not disappointed at the end of the day. I was just as happy, far more happy, leaving with national championship number 17 as opposed to an interview with somebody. So it worked out fine.
Eli, final question. I know you're very busy. We appreciate you working us in this morning. Jimmy Carter, our man in Nashville, about an hour ago said when you talk to Eli, ask him about his restaurant. He's a fan.
Oh, Jimmy's a great guy. And, yes, I've owned an Italian restaurant in Pelham, Alabama. It's called Nino's, and we've been open now for 9 years, and we put out great, great food. And if you're ever in the Pelham area, it's just 4 miles south of the Galleria. It's very kind of you and Jimmy to bring it up, but you didn't have to. I don't have to have a commercial to be on the show here, but we are proud of our restaurant, Nino's Italian Restaurant. So if you're in the Pelham area, 4 miles south of the Galleria, it's on Highway 31 in Birmingham, and we'd love to see you.
Been there, and it's awesome, and you are awesome. And again, thank you for your time this morning. Roll Tide, Eli Gold, one of the absolute best.
Thank you, guys. Great to be with you, and I wish I had more time, but I'm hanging up with you, and I'm going back onto the phone to be on with the folks down in Mobile, and I've got about, I believe you're going to be one of 11 interviews I'm doing between now and the noon hour, and here they're calling me, so I got to go.
So long. Eli Gold, everybody, on 95.3 The Bear, the official voice of Alabama sports in Tuscaloosa. Great to have Eli on.